Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
Very excited to talk about today's topic.
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz brought this, literally, I know, who starts a podcast talking about the Wizard of Oz? But we're going to skip right to the Lion Man, and we're going to talk about courage today.
Yes, we are. Yes. Yeah, it's something that people with courage, when you see people with courage, I think most all of us admire that. We're like, wow, I don't know if I could do that. That is amazing. And the fact that you said, I don't know, or even worse, I don't think I could do that, you already set yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
So you can admire and be maybe even awestruck of what that person did, but that if you close off the fact that, well, I could never do that, now you're not going to grow, you're not going to improve. And that doesn't mean fighting in war, going into a burning building, that stuff. I mean, yes, that's amazing things. What we're talking about more is the daily, the public speaking being one of them, a big one. Making the phone calls, you deal with that with your agents, writing that email, having a tough conversation with somebody, a business partner or your spouse or whatever. All of that takes courage.
It's so funny because when people think about courage, this is one of those values that it's so important to live a full life, right? To be somebody who's courageous. But when we think about it as people, we think, well, courage is something for like firefighters. Right.
Yes.
Courage is something for, people who do things. Right. I'm just a sales guy. What do I need courage for?
Right.
And 100%, like, courage and confidence go very hand in hand, because I really think the more confident we are, that's how we level up what we need to be courageous to do. Courage leads to confidence. And, that's kind of how we level up.
Right.
But I really think, picking up the phone and calling somebody that you don't know takes courage, right? Some of us are in the greatest relationships of our lives because we had the courage to go talk to somebody that we didn't know. I'm one of those people, right?
Right.
So I want, when people think about courage, and we're going to talk about 3 steps to build this as a part of your life, right? But when people think about courage, I want you to take it down to the smallest level, right, of those little things that have been on your task list for months that you've been too busy to do. Because 90% of the time, too busy to do is just code for afraid to do.
Yes, it truly is. And most of the time, when and this is part of procrastination too,
Yeah.
In your head is way worse than what reality will be. What's really going to happen when you do public speaking? You might flub some words, you might lose your train of thought, you might do things, but hopefully you're not going to die because,
Yeah.
And it's about taking those small little steps. And like I said, so much is in our head. And then once we do it, we're like, oh, that wasn't bad. That wasn't a big deal. Why was I all worked up with that? And if that happens to you, use that as a way to build your courage and build that courage muscle for the next time you encounter this action that you don't want to do.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because I think, what is a comfort zone, right? A comfort zone is just, we get to the point where we know, like, deep down inside, we know there is better, right? If we do certain things, right? I can have better health if I do this thing. I can have better financial security if I do this thing, these actions. But then we go, yeah, but that's going to take time. And that time I have to trade for something I'm doing now. And I don't want to lose what I've got now.
Right.
Yeah. So the ability to see beyond that comfort zone and take those actions to improve your life, right? And to work towards those goals that you really want takes a lot of courage. And that's why this is so important to build.
Yes. So step 1 is, and this is probably something you could guess, because it's a common thing when you hear courage, is face your fears. So that's certainly way easier to say than do. face your fears.
Yeah.
However, if you do it sequentially of by size, like face your small fears, and that's going to build your confidence. Let's say it's public speaking. Well, instead of speaking in front of 10,000 people, start with a group of 5. Can you do that? Are you, if you go out with friends and there's 5 or 6 of you there, are you okay talking to that crowd? The answer is hopefully yes. Then you build to the next one. And I remember back when I had to start doing public speaking. Obviously, teaching martial arts is public speaking. I did not like to do that. I was shy as a kid. I didn't really like to. I didn't even talk to single people, let alone a group of people. And putting yourself in the right position body wise, like acting like you're courageous, certainly helps with that. But also, like I said, is build it up. So start with a few people, then a few more. And that wasn't that bad. I didn't actually die. I'm good.
Yeah.
So now I can move on to the next one. And it's also studying people, to do that. So facing your fears is, if somebody else can do that, what are the steps that they did to do it?
Yep.
And then you figure that out.
I think that's a great tip, because I agree with you. Like, I think preparation, is important. Like when you talk about something like public speaking, I remember one of the
Yep.
first presentations I gave, I had like a 10-point PowerPoint where I wrote
Mm-hmm.
everything I was going to say.
Yep.
And I think you can over prepare if it leads
Yes.
to more delay, right?
Yep.
But there's a quote that I always say to myself, and I wish I remembered right now who said it, but we'll give credit in the notes if I can find it. But it's, the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding.
Mm.
And I always love that quote, because when I start to get that feeling during the day of, oh, I really don't want to make these phone calls for this
Right.
property that I'm marketing. I really don't,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm nervous to call these people.
Right.
I try to remind myself that that's good, right?
Right.
That
Right.
feeling is a feeling that those actions are moving me forward,
Right.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing that can happen in most of these situations, we did this podcast forever ago. I don't remember what we
Mm-hmm.
called it, but we always said, if it doesn't kill you and you're not going to jail, you might as well
Oh
give it
yeah,
a shot,
that
right?
was, I
Like
think.
those,
Well, that was your quote
yeah, yeah. If it doesn't kill me
for
and I'm not going
sure.
to go to jail, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm probably going to try it,
Right.
because it's not illegal and it's not deadly. Um, but I think, that we've all had that feeling where, like, we pull up the task and we stare at it, and then we start to go, well, that one, it might be not a good time to start that, because I don't have enough time, or I don't have
Right.
enough whatever, right? That feeling is great because it tells you that's the thing you should be working on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think courage is certainly linked to confidence, and I talked about that a little bit with put your body in the state of looking confident will help with your fears as well.
Yep.
That power stance. We do stance commands
Mm-hmm.
in our classrooms, and when we instituted that, it probably had to be at least 30 years ago, maybe a little longer. That made all the world of difference of the students' performance after.
Yeah.
So that's a key thing. So it's also, we wrote down is saying yes to discomfort.
Yeah.
That little phrase, and I think you mentioned that when we're doing the prep for the show. That really struck me. It's like, oh yeah, saying yes to discomfort, because that's where you start with. So not these big fears like we're talking about, the things to build your courage, but the small little things, the phone calls like you talked about. So moving on to number 2, this one can be tough. It's embrace vulnerabilities. So we're all vulnerable in certain things, but to embrace them, and hopefully even make them your strength.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that makes a great leader is the ability to show people, right, and to show people that you are also afraid of things.
Sure.
Because I think it's great to stand behind the leader and just assume, oh, they're fearless, they can
Right.
just do it, they're
Right.
naturals, all of the
Mm-hmm.
words. But I think being able to actually go to people and say, like, look, man, I'm terrified, but I'm doing it
Yeah.
anyway, and I'm
Yeah.
making progress. And
Yes.
any business owner you talk to, for the most part, unless they started with gobs and gobs of cash in the bank and,
Yeah.
whatever, and even in those cases, sometimes it's terrifying when you start,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you just don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
So I think, understanding that it's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to show others that you're afraid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I would say the caveat to that is I think you need to be selective with who you show that to, right?
Sure.
So if it's a rank and file worker and you're, let's say, the CEO, I probably would say that's not appropriate, or
Yeah.
is nor is it going to help you. But if it's with your inner circle, your group that you're close to, I think that's very appropriate because we all need help. We all need we. The reason we have a team is not for others to do everything that you don't want to do, but to do things maybe you're not as good at. And hopefully you're building people around you that are better than you in
Yeah.
certain areas. So even though you're the leader, you're the one making the company go in a certain direction, the people around you should be building towards that and are better than you and others. So you
Yep.
sharing, here's what I want to work on, they can share it with you, and now you're building and growing together. That makes a really, really good team, you
It
know.
does.
Yep. And I look at the dojo and I think, I think I'm a pretty good public speaker. I think I can motivate the students and the staff. And I'm okay on phone calls, but you certainly are way better on phone calls than me, So you're going to make the majority of the phone calls versus me. I've never really enjoyed being on the phone, like being on the phone. Um, and I know that I'm not afraid to make calls, but it should be who's the best at this,
Yeah.
right? Who's the best working with the little kids? Usually
Hmm.
not me. They're afraid of me because of my size, right? So that doesn't mean I can't. That doesn't mean I don't know how, because I do
Yeah.
know how to teach the young kids. But who's better than that? Well, probably a 17-year-old girl is way better than me
Yeah.
at that group.
Yeah.
So I think that's all part of that. That in a sense is
Hmm.
embracing. Think of vulnerabilities, what you're not good at.
Yeah.
That's
And
aligned with that.
and I think part of that is also like I think part of the vulnerability and the embracing it is not letting your subconscious beat you up for being afraid. Because I
Right.
think that I'm talking about, people who are close to you, who's closer to you than your own brain. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
a lot of times I think we can get in that cycle where we're like, oh, I'm never gonna try this. I give up, whatever. It's just not gonna happen. I think it's important to regulate that and to tell yourself it's okay.
Yeah.
So when your subconscious is saying this is a problem,
Right.
you can just tell yourself it's not. This is totally
Yes.
normal part of the process.
Right. Yep. And then the last one is number three is taking calculated risks. And
Yeah.
and this not that big risks don't work out, but I think of like investing.
Hmm.
If you have a certain percentage that you're doing like these big trades, that a certain percentage of your money, that's fine. But really, what it is taking calculated risks that you're not going to lose the whole thing that you work years to build up. And same thing in business. If all of a sudden, like for instance, during the lockdowns and COVID, our business specifically, you were right there with me. We pivoted on a few things, but we didn't like totally do a 180 on things.
Right.
We just pivoted slightly to adjust to the circumstances, and
Yeah.
and we took calculated risk on certain things to stay afloat, basically,
Yeah.
like a lot of businesses did. But I think, especially if you have an established business or whatever you're doing, is you want to make sure that you're taking enough risk to grow, but not so much that it can take the company down. That's
100%.
probably not a smart thing to do.
Yeah. And I mean, like it's funny. I remember, prior to starting my company, I worked at for a real estate developer. And one of the guys who worked with me, he moved here from Florida. He listens to the podcast, so he's gonna know I'm talking about him. But it was funny because he was probably 24. He was single, and his apartment was like $400 a month, and that was
Yeah,
all he needed to survive.
yeah.
Right. So I used to tell him, I'm like, man, like he would say, I don't know if I should do this. I'm
Oh my
nervous.
god.
And I'm like, dude, you have nothing to lose. Like you
Right.
are you are there. There is no your comfort zone is like non-existent.
Yeah.
Risks, right? So the
Yeah.
the calculated risk for him was he could go anywhere in the world,
Right.
probably get a job as a waiter or bartender, and
Hmm.
he'd be fine, right? But if you're a business owner and you own $1 million company,
Right.
right? Those risks impact a lot more people,
Yes.
so calculating, like I love that it's take calculated risks. What are we
Hmm.
calculating? It's
Right.
calculating the risk reward, right?
Right.
I don't skydive. Okay. Not because I think skydiving is dangerous. I think skydiving is probably extremely safe, right? People do it every day. But the reward I'm going to get for taking the risk to me is just not
Hmm. Right.
like sure, I'm sure I'll be done with it and I'll be like, "Oh, that was a great experience. It was a lot of
Yeah.
fun." The risk though is I have like family, a company, all these things.
Right.
So that to me is a bad calculation. To other people
Yeah.
it might be a good calculation,
Sure.
but everyone needs to go through that individually and say, is this risk worth the reward? And a lot of times it is.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not. And if it's
Right.
not, just don't do it.
And that's really about trying to get out of your comfort zones. You're taking those calculated risks. It's doing something a little bit more. Get just expanding. So it's the step by step process. Now, sometimes it works that you jump all in and you do something, and that's how your personality works and
Yep.
how you were raised or how you were built. That's fine. But I think for the most of us, like you expanded on, it needs to be calculated. So that way you're not losing the company for a
Yeah.
dumb decision. Or investments, you decide I'm gonna use my margin account and I'm gonna buy all these options.
Mm.
Whoa, never do that. Never do that, because yeah, you could get a lot, but also you could lose everything, get a margin call, and now you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
And people that invest know
Unless
what I'm
you're
talking about, but
yeah,
others were like,
unless you're
over my
24 and you have $300 rent, and then okay, maybe we risk that.
yeah,
But yeah, so I mean, I think exactly what you said. The calculating is the important part of this, right? Because we
yeah,
should take risks, but we should make sure we do that math and just make sure
right,
that it all works out in our favor.
exactly, absolutely.
So anyway, so let's review these steps. So I mean,
Okay.
building courage in our everyday life, just to help us live that full life that we're going for. Number one, face your fears. Say yes to discomfort. Remember that the
Hmm.
magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding.
Nice. Number two, embrace vulnerability. So being open and honest, willing to share with your team or people that are close to you the things that you're working on or improving on. And that will really help not only solidify your team or your family, but also it'll help you as well.
Absolutely. And then take calculated risks. Do the math, risk versus reward. And if it leans toward reward, give it a shot. It's not going to
Right.
kill you.
Right.
And that wraps up this episode of the Achieve Results Now podcast on courage. We hope you got some value out of this, and we hope you share this with somebody else. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, for specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.